And welcome into the Waiver Wire Show, the IDP Guys Waiver Wire Show. I am one of your hosts, Michael Sicoli. The other host, at Axton Harding, who you might have saw just walk off there, has a quick little call he's got to get to. He will be joining us shortly before our show gets too far into it. But week 8, we are on to week 8. We just had week 7. A ton of big news coming out, a ton of injuries coming out, sadly, and a lot of IDP superstars to dive into, as well as offense after that. So, again, just to give a quick rundown, we're going to start off with the defense, go defensive linemen, linebackers, defensive backs. Then we're going to go answer some questions, any defense questions we might have in the chat, and then go on to offense, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. You know the deal. Again, at any point, submit any questions in the chat. We'll be sure to get to it for your waiver wire, all your waiver wire needs. Actually, you're here with us now. We hopping off? I don't know. By the way, if you are, how are you doing today? I don't know.
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, but I'm doing even better if we just get right into these defensive linemen. If you do have to step away, obviously no issue. We'll be having some back and forth as much as we can. Let's get into defensive lineman pickups for this week. Now, excuse me. Last week, we had Matt Judon, who had 4 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, pass defense, forced fumble. He had a monster day on Monday night against the Bears, one of the few bright spots of the Patriots unit. We also brought up Charles Omenu, who didn't play, but we brought him up more so as a replacement for Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa returned. And Danico Autry, who had a good day, 3 tackles, a sack, TFL, QB hit, and a pass defense. So pretty strong defensive line pickups from last week. I hope we can keep it going into this week. Let's start with Grover Stewart, Indianapolis Colts defensive tackle. He's been averaging 5 tackles a game, which for a defensive lineman, for a defensive tackle, it's nice to have a floor like that. And he's been doing it week in, week out. He had a 75% snap share in week 7. Again, that's a good number for a defensive lineman, especially defensive tackle, because we know how they can be somewhat rotational. And he had 12 tackles. So, it's nice to have a 5 tackle floor, a 12 tackle ceiling, and also a guy that could occasionally get up the middle for a sack because of the threats that the Colts unit can pose on that line. So Grover Stewart's been someone that has been consistent for the past few weeks, even for the season. So somebody that I definitely like to target, especially if I have a needed defensive line, especially if I have bye weeks coming up. Maybe I lost Joey Bosa a few weeks ago, and I've been scrambling to find somebody. Grover Stewart is still out there in too many leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those. It's an anomaly as far as defensive linemen go. You really don't see many linemen giving or providing you with a tackle for kind of like what he's put up, and for somebody to that can absolutely get to the quarterback every now and again. He's somebody that I would definitely want on my roster. Give you a nice safe floor, especially for bye weeks, and he should continue to do so. I mean, if you can only hope that maybe his snap share goes up a little bit, and you can get all the more production out of him.
Completely agree. We'll move on to another name. I'm not going to spend too long on this one, but Chase Young, bit of news on this one, saying he's going to start getting back to practice this week. I'm not expecting him to play this week. I don't know if he'll play next week, but it's still someone that is a superstar when active in Chase Young. So it might be the type of thing where if you have an IR spot, now's the time to pick him up. Now's the time to stash him, see when he returns, and even if you don't play him, maybe you sell high when he comes back. Because it probably will still be 3-4 weeks before you get to play him, and you probably don't want to play him in his first week back, might be on a snap count, but either way, it's somebody that I want people to have their eye on just in case people haven't been holding the IR spot, because the way this year has gone, the way football goes, you've been rotating those IR spots. If you don't have 20 of them, you might have had to get rid of him. I had Chase Young in my week 1 IR spot. Week 2, he was no longer there. Couldn't hold him for that long. So just a name we want to throw out there, especially as he starts returning to practice. We got one other name I want to throw out here. Cincinnati Bengals.
Step away for just a second.
Yeah, no problem, Axton. No problem at all. So Jay Tufele, I hope I'm saying this right. Jay Tufele, I apologize if I'm not. But defensive tackle for the Bengals. He's been filling in really well opposite of BJ Hill on that line. And filling in really well for Josh Tupoa, who was the starter, but he's dealing with an ankle injury or calf injury. That was about 2 weeks ago. He has 6 tackles in back-to-back weeks since Tupoa went down. And he jumped in snaps this week. He was around 35%. Now he jumped to 45. Wouldn't be surprised if that jumped up to 55 or 50-ish next week. again, we talk about how defense tackle can be somewhat rotational, but the usage is starting to grow. It's getting there. It makes sense for it to get there. The Bengals unit is playing well. And on top of that, they face Cleveland this week, which allows the top 10 amount of points to the defensive tackle position because of how much they run the ball. They're going to run up the middle. That means he's going to hit that tackle floor to me. I really like that tackle floor for somebody like Jay Tufele. Again, if I'm saying that incorrectly, I just hope you guys can find him on your wire. That's really what matters at the end of the day. But yeah, a good guy from the Bengals that you want to be challenging and playing in your lineups this week. And I'll throw out one other name as well. Sam Williams, Dallas Cowboys rookie. He had a huge day, multi-sack day. But, great day. He had 30 points in one of my leagues, but he only played 24% of the snaps. Still, a lot of talent on the defensive line for the Cowboys. Not a lot of opportunity. His time might be coming. I'm not going to chase the points this week. Just want to throw it out there in case you were thinking of it. So, those are our defensive line picks. But we'll move on to linebackers. As I say every single week, the meat of the IDP position. Last week, we talked about Ernest Jones, who was obviously on bye, so we'll see how he does this week. I brought up Josh Bynes as a possible one-week streamer. He did okay. It wasn't great. He did get hurt mid-game, but I'm not going to count that as an excuse. That was a miss on my end. And we talked about Marcus Golden, who didn't get the playtime we were hoping for. So we're going to try to get back on track this week. I want to start with an obvious name in Deion Jones. We talked about him 2 weeks ago on this show, so if you listened, if you picked him up, you were ahead of the game already. So Deion Jones was excellent. Deion Jones had a pretty strong debut and got some usage. And obviously, sadly enough, Jacob Phillips, who was the fill-in for Cleveland, is now out for the year with a pec injury. So the route to the green dot for Deion Jones is very clear. In fact, I really expect him to get it, which means he's going to be up there 80 to 90, possibly 100% snaps for Deion Jones, in addition to having the green dot. He's a smash play rest of the season until he starts struggling. Unless he starts struggling, but we're not going to predict that forward. All we can predict is usage, and that's what we care about. So I've seen him still available on some wires, is my point of bringing him up. But names that are probably on the wire for sure, Jermaine Davis, who has a very spotty production season. He started off the year really strong, in terms of snap share. We were talking about 90, 100% guy, that breakout that we were hoping for in the later rounds with a younger type of player. But that's dropped. That's dropped around 50, 40, 60. And now he's settled on that 60 number. He's getting about 5 to 6 tackles a week. I just like the matchup. He faces Indy. It's a team that's allowing a top 5 number to the linebacker position. Plus, you have Sam Ellinger under center, so you add some little bit turnover volatility, and who doesn't like that? So the thing about Indianapolis and the thing about the Washington is that you really have to play linebackers against Indianapolis. You have to be able to stop the run. You have to be able to stop Jonathan Taylor. It's not the type of system where Washington can switch to a 3 safety, a 4 safety, or even multiple defensive back system, because they're going to start crowding the box. And I think that settles up for a good day for Jermaine Davis. And he's available on a lot of waivers because he's disappointed after a stronger start in terms of usage. So definitely a name I want to look out for if I do need that 1 week play. So that's the first name I want to throw out there. Another one, which I'll give a quick self-plug here to my Twitter at Michael__Sicoli, because I had a great discussion with a lot of IDP people on this name of this Bengals linebacker, Akeem Davis Gaither. 2020 4th-round pick. Talked about him at the end of last week once we knew that Logan Wilson was going to be missing this week and potentially beyond with a hamstring injury. And then I talked about him on Twitter. I said him or Jacob Phillips. I leaned ADG, and he paid out in a big way. 9 tackles, which was a team high for the for the linebacker. He took on 68% of the snaps opposite of Jermaine Pratt. I don't see that changing anytime soon. As the Bengals, like I mentioned with Tufele, the Bengals unit was good. Akeem Davis Gaither played very well. I think he's a very capable streamer as long as Logan Wilson is out, and somebody that is available in almost 100% of leagues right now. So definitely someone that you want to be picking up, and I think someone you can plug and play. And another person, we're talking about young, hotness, new players, Christian Harris. Interesting guy. All right. So this was somebody that you might not have heard the name of outside of April draft. Last time he played in a football game, Alabama National Championship from last year. It's been a minute since Christian Harris has seen the field. He was dealing with a hamstring injury he got in the preseason. This is a linebacker, 3rd-round linebacker for the Houston Texans I'm talking about. And in his first game back, he immediately relegated Camus Grugier-Hill to about 40% of snaps. It was under 40%. And he jumped up to 66% himself. It's a good role, good usage. Now, the thing I want to bring up, because that's great. It was great Christian Harris getting those reps. The problem was he did miss 4 tackles. He didn't play well. He wasn't great. But I choose to believe that the Houston Texans will show patience with their rookie linebacker for a team that, let's face it, the season's over. They're not looking at the playoffs. They're just trying to build on the future, find their building blocks. So they have no incentive to really play Camus Grugier-Hill over Christian Harris and make that change again after already making that switch. So I think Christian Harris could be an interesting play season long. I think he could be all of a sudden facing very good game scripts for a linebacker and get steady snaps along the way. It's still Christian Kirksey. Christian Harris could be working himself into that side role, but it's not someone I want to play yet, but somebody I want to roster because the usage is growing and the upside is there. So those are the linebackers I want to throw out there. I'm going to just bring a quick toucher on Atlanta, where Rashaan Evans and Michael Walker are still the 2 guys, but Troy Anderson has flashed in recent weeks when Michael Walker missed time. And, he didn't disappear this week. He was around 20 to 40% of snaps. Not somebody that I'm going to lock into my lineup. So Troy Anderson is somebody I just want to keep an eye on, especially dynasty circles. He's a really good player for years to come. I just don't think it'll happen this year. Welcome back, Axton. I drove on through the defensive linemen and linebackers. If there was anyone you wanted to touch on, feel free to. Otherwise, we can power on through to defensive backs. You let me know. Oh, I think you're muted, Axton, or I can't hear you. So we might be having some mic troubles. There we go. I
had myself muted. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on. I like the Akeem Davis Gaither pick with Wilson out this week. You posted a post on Twitter and got a lot of engagement and a lot of opinions and sides to that. Or to a question kind of related to him a little bit. And I think if you would have picked him, he would have paid off this week.
I did. I did play him over Jacob Phillips in that discussion as well. Yeah.
Right on. Good deal. Yeah. He's definitely someone that's gonna soak up that production while Wilson's out. So definitely someone to pick up off the waivers. Jermaine Davis is kind of been up and down, but he's still a solid player, somebody to keep an eye on. Christian Harris is kind of somebody, the rookie, correct, that we've all been kind of waiting for his time to come in and play. And it was nice to see him just kind of put Cameron Grugier-Hill to the side a little bit and kind of take over that role. At least 36% is a decent amount for his first game as a rookie. So be looking forward to seeing him get more snaps.
Oh, 36% what he immediately sent KJH down to. Oh, it was even he jumped to 60.
I read that incorrectly.
I know.
Yeah,
it's even more wild. It's even more wild to think. Yeah. So I think it'll only grow throughout the season. It's still not something I'm chasing because I think something we also remember is that KGH wasn't good either with 60% of the snaps. Right. So now Christian Harris has to be even better in his first few games back from a very long stint without football. So, but still something I want to be stashing because I think that upside is there, and I think the Texans will show patience with him. But let's with
KGH earlier in the year, it's not like there's not production available there at the position.
The highs are there. The high is there.
Yeah, he's got the opportunity. So with such an elite prospect coming out of college, you can only hope that he can really come in and remain consistent. Kind of what we all wanted KGH to be.
Exactly, a day 2 pick still a good thing to remember. But we'll move on to defensive backs. We brought up Ryan Neal last week, who took over that safety job, that strong safety job in Seattle, and he boomed. 7 tackles, interception, 4 pass defenses, which is a wild stat. So good day for Ryan Neal. Hope you guys picked him up. And if he's still on your wire, this still applies this week. Make sure you get him. Brought up Shaquille Griffin, who has been awful this year in real life and has been targeted heavily. So he's getting those tackles, but he didn't play this week. Picked up a midweek injury. So what can we do about that? And John Johnson, who I brought up who's been fairly safe this year. Really disappointing day. Only 4 tackles, but I do chalk that up to more of a Baltimore thing where I guess that was the scheme they laid out. They went more linebacker heavy. We saw 4 linebackers in Jacob Phillips, Sion Takiti, Deion Jones, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah getting very meaningful snaps. So I think they came at the expense of John Johnson's usage this week. I do expect them to bounce back going forward. But let's move on to the names this week. Which one do you want to start with? I'll let you kick it off because I've been rattling off today.
Oh, that's okay. I'm going to start off with Keanu Neal, Bucks linebacker, or Bucks defensive back. Sorry, with Antoine Winfield going out this last week with a concussion, Keanu Neal allowed to come in and take over his snaps. This last week he played 82%, and only had 4 tackles. So we're just kind of temper our expectations a little bit here. But if you need to fill in with Antoine Winfield back, he ought to be getting plenty of action.
Yep, completely agree. And I should have mentioned this before as well. To the questions in the chat from both Alexander302 and Infinite Possibilities, we will definitely be getting those defensive ones right after defense, offense right after offense. Definitely not ignoring them in any way. But yeah, Keanu Neal is somebody that they use in packages regardless. Like, I mean, they find a usage for him, whether the guys are active or not, whether that was when Mike Edwards missed, they plugged in Keanu. When Antoine Winfield missed in this game, they plugged in Keanu. They'll find a usage for him, and the ceiling hasn't been there yet, but I do hope that they get him back on track. Like you slipped up there and said linebacker. That's kind of what Keanu is at times, right? So it's a very fair thing. I see Keanu, I kind of think linebacker as well. It's a very hybrid type of player. But I'll throw out another name. Sadly, with all these concussions, hate seeing them. And Jalen Hawkins, safety for Atlanta, was the latest victim to it. And he's been excellent this year. That was Jalen Hawkins, who is a very good stash if you need him, if he is somehow still on your wire. But the backup there, who I am somewhat interested in, Dean Marlowe, who immediately got every single snap after Hawkins went down. So he's definitely the next man up. He didn't get on the stat sheet in those 22% snaps. It was late in the game. The game was well out of hand for Atlanta, so I'm not reading too much into it. And AJ Terrell is also out for this secondary, so the chains are going to be moving against Atlanta a little bit more than they have been in weeks past, where this defense has outperformed all expectations this year. I think it's safe to say. But last weekend on Sunday they got gouged, and that largely came because AJ Terrell missed 80% of the game, and then you take out Jalen Hawkins. So there's a lot of opportunity for Dean Marlowe of Atlanta. They face Carolina, which, if you want to face a offense, you can't pick too many to go against better for a defensive player than Carolina with a turnover possibility, as well as just, tackle opportunities. Not a lot of people are going to make people miss in Carolina. So I think Dean Marlowe is an interesting 1 week play with Jalen Hawkins is out.
Yeah, and with AJ Terrell out too, that just kind of leaves that secondary yearning for somebody to come in and really be that replacement guy while these guys are out. So with all the usage and snap share he's set in for, I think he's definitely a good streamer while these guys are out. The last one we got here is Geno Stone for Baltimore. We saw Marcus Williams go down, but Geno Stone's going to come in as a replacement. He's had 6 tackles and 8 tackles in back-to-back weeks, and forced and recovered a game-winning fumble in that time. And he played 100% of the snaps this past week in replacement. So definitely somebody who's finding a way to pad the stat sheets while he's in living on borrowed time. So might not be a bad selection to ride his wave while he's in there replacing Marcus Williams.
Yeah, and Geno Stone, we brought him up a few weeks ago when everybody was talking about Kyle Hamilton. We said it was going to be Geno Stone. It has been Geno Stone. Now, he finally jumped to 100%. He's been hovering that 70%, but and maybe that's a 1 week thing, but Geno Stone had their game-winning forced fumble in that game. I think they're going to reward him, keep him going, and he is the incumbent on that system. He's been a Raven for a few years now, so I do think that there is some value with them while the Ravens are just trying to find their footing. I want to throw out one other defensive back name. Damar Hamlin of Buffalo has been really darn good this year. Somebody we probably should have been looking at and brought him up last week as the Micah Hyde replacement in that secondary and all the injuries that Buffalo has suffered. He's been posting very steady tackle numbers. That's Damar Hamlin, just a name to keep in mind. But let's get into our defensive questions. We do have plenty of them to get into. Let's start with infinite possibilities. He's saying he's trying to trade Carlos Dunlap and I hope I said that correct, Efe Obada for Chandler Jones. I don't hate it, but I'm also incredibly worried about Chandler Jones. I have a piece coming out about that actually in this week's IDP Guys newsletter. The how to sign up for that is in my Twitter bio. The link for that if you aren't already. But I'm worried about Chandler Jones. I'll give a quick teaser into it. He only has half a sack this year. He's not getting to the quarterback as much as he wanted to. He's averaging a pressure less per game than what he normally does on a season. And he's had Max Crosby on the other side of him. I'm not really sure what's going wrong for Chandler Jones, but this is a 32-year-old who's having his worst season yet.
I'm kind of right there with you. Chandler Jones isn't really somebody that, at this point, anyways, I'm going out of my way to acquire in many leagues. He's not somebody that that's just going to come out and give you any kind of reliable numbers, at least at this point. So, I think I'm probably going to go ahead and go with your conclusion there and probably pass on that one.
Yeah, it's kind of a why bother trade because I don't Dunlap and Obada's. I mean, Obada's had a quietly decent year, but he's also 30. You're not giving up too much, but I guess I would still chase the upside of Chandler Jones. Maybe he turns it around because I don't think Dunlap and Obada are doing much for you, but not someone I'm really super excited about to begin with. So he's also in a 16-team, 1 QB, 53-man roster, IDP Dynasty League. He needs a defensive end. He's looking at Tyquan Lewis, Charles Omenu, Carl Granderson, or Morgan Fox. We are digging into the barrel for that
trenches
one.
Here.
We are in the trenches for that. So we brought up Omenu before, just somebody that's not getting enough work while Nick Bosa is active. But I mean, we're talking about true bottom of the barrel. I mean, Morgan Fox got himself a sack this week against Seattle. I know that. Tyquan Lewis. Someone's going to have to remind me what Tyquan Lewis is up to nowadays. But
it seems like he's got a decent tackle floor. It seems like he and Omenu, I'm just kind of pulling up player profiles and stats and whatnot on Sleeper, since I'm not really all that familiar with these guys. But it seems like Tyquan Lewis and Omenu are probably looking about kind of the same production, snap share and stuff like that. To me,
Tyquan Lewis. Tyquan Lewis would be my pick here. He had 80% snaps this past week. That's probably the highest of any of these guys that we're going to be talking about that you just brought up there. And, he's been quietly somewhat getting it done. He only has 1 sack on the year, but he's getting you a handful of tackles each week. And truly, when you're scraping bottom of the barrel, I'm chasing snap share. So that Tyquan Lewis would probably be my pick there. I don't mind Omenu just because he's been productive in his spot starts. And we talked about it last week where we said, Nick Bosa, he's good filling for Nick Bosa, but he's grabbed sacks when Bosa's been active too. So I don't mind either of those guys, but Tyquan Lewis is probably the guy. If you have to play one, I'd probably lean him. Yep. He also has a Mike Hilton, AJ Terrell as his cornerbacks. That's a shame because Terrell's obviously down. Mike Hilton's been dealing with a bit of something as well. Do we like Jack Jones, Martin Emerson, Kobe Bryant, Kendall Fuller? I like Kobe Bryant and Kendall Fuller. Jack Jones has been excellent this year as well. Kobe Bryant has been Kendall Fuller probably has the highest floor of this bunch. Kobe Bryant Kobe Bryant's been very solid as well. He dropped an interception this week, which was very upsetting to see because I also played him. And Jack Jones has been good. Obviously he's been heavy on his interceptions. I'm not sure if that's going to always continue, but he's been PFF's number 1 rated corner entering last night's game. So my pick here, if I had to just play one of them, I'd probably play Kobe Bryant. That's probably my pick. He's been excellent this year, opposite of Tariq Woolen, and the tackle numbers have been really good.
Yeah, after looking through each of these guys, I'm probably in on Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant at the top of the list. Kendall Fuller would probably be right behind him just because, like you said, that tackle floor and the nice production that either of them putting out with the kind of usage that they're getting. Kobe's had, from what I saw at a glance, 4 or 5 forced fumbles already this year. So
he's been
definitely somebody. Yeah, aside if you got somebody that's able to pad the stat sheet with a considerable tackle floor, and then also add in a pass deflection, forced fumbles, things like that, and just kind of fill the stat sheet everywhere, even especially going on to the waivers. Those are guys you really want to keep an eye on, even throw out and roster those guys, throw them on the bench once in a while and just kind of see if they produce.
The defense has a lot of holes in in Seattle. And, we talk about Geno Smith being one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year outside of, outperforming expectations. But Seattle found two great corners in Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen later in the draft. And that's just, there needs to be more credit given to Seattle for that. I just want to take a second to say that because Kobe Bryant's been great. Tariq Woolen's been excellent. One more question from Infinite Possibilities on the defensive side of the ball. He has Dylan Cole, linebacker for the Tennessee Titans. Would you pick up EJ Speed of the Colts or Duke Riley of Miami? I'd be tempted. I'm not interested in EJ Speed because the inevitable return of Shaq Leonard really makes EJ Speed very much a auxiliary piece, as much as he's occasionally flashed. And, at this point, it's Zaire Franklin's job. I keep messing up his name, but Okwurke, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Just Bobby O.
Yeah. Bobby O is also going to be around there, so just not a ton of reps for EJ Speed. But for me, it's Dylan Cole or Duke Riley. What are you thinking?
I wouldn't mind Duke Riley. He's seen limited snaps, but even with 20 to 30 snaps a week, the guy's getting 3, 4, 5 tackles on a weekly basis. So that's encouraging. The low snap count isn't really all that encouraging, but the production is nice there. I'm with you on EJ Speed. I think Zaire, Bobby O, and Shaq Leonard are pretty well going to soak up about anything that the Colts have to offer as far as linebacker production goes. But let me just pull up Dylan Cole one more time here.
Yeah, I really want to say Duke Riley because, like you said, the tackle efficiency is there. Dylan Cole's been revolving around 50% snaps every single week, very consistent on that level. But I do want to note that Zach Cunningham is hurt. I believe Zach Cunningham will come back sometime this season. They also signed Joe Scobert 2 weeks ago, and he's been working his way in. He got himself on the field. It was like 25% of the time this week. That could grow, and Dylan Cole is not the greatest player to hold off hit somebody if, they brought in a veteran for a reason. The Titans are clearly, I guess, trying to win this year. I don't know what the Titans are trying to do. It's really an outperforming roster. It's not that good. But if I have to...
What are the odds that Duke Riley sees a little increase in production or usage with Jalen Phillips out?
That's what I'm hoping for because Jalen Phillips drops into coverage more times than he should be. And that's, if I drops into coverage, I'm just saying in the middle of the field, whereas Jalen Phillips should be blitzing every single time. But Duke Riley, I would lean Duke Riley because I don't think any of the Miami linebackers have a firm hold on that position. Jerome Baker continues to get 100% of his work. He hasn't been that great this year. I don't really know why they never fluctuated with him. But, Landon Roberts, I would take Duke Riley because I do think Dylan Cole might be losing snaps to Joe Scobert sooner than later.
Yep, okay. I'm in agreement. I like, even with both of them kind of on limited roles, I like Duke Riley's production and maybe outlook, at least for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. And I agree with this final point of everyone liking the share. This is good stuff. I appreciate Infinite Possibilities. Always love seeing your questions. Always like getting them. Just fun to have this discourse, honestly. So, yep, we're going to move on to offensive side of the ball. And also before I do that, I want to note, keep dropping those questions in offense, defense. We're obviously the IDP guys. We're not going to turn away defensive questions just because we're moving on to the offense. So drop them in the chat, offense, defense, whatever you have. We love to answer, and we will get to it at the end of the positions. And, of course, be sure to follow myself at Michael__Sicoli, at Axton, following Axton at Harding_3. And, of course, the IDP guys at IDP Guys. If you guys are not already following it, it's where all of our stuff inevitably ends up. It's where all the great defensive, offensive, fantasy football content you could possibly ask for ends up. Just a ton of fun. So if you like anything like this show has been, definitely be sure to check out the IDP Guys because that's what this show is. But let's move on to offense with the quarterbacks. Last week, we brought up two names in terms of Matt Ryan, who was not great, but he was also playing a bit injured that we didn't really realize, and Daniel Jones, who I brought up, who had a very good day because I brought up going into last week, he was third. Entering week 5, he was third in the league in rushing. He didn't get it done on weeks, or I might be 1 week off. Entering week 6, he was third in the league in rushing. Week 7 didn't really. I am 1 week off. Week 6 didn't really run it. Week 7 this past week ran the snot out of the ball. Did what he had to do. Took it on his chin. and it got it done for fantasy. So definitely someone that, we're going to be following up with this week, I think. Right, Axton?
Yeah, definitely. He's kind of the first one we had on our list as like a repeat streamer, because of his rushing us upside with the lack of receiving and just the mess that's come with this offense outside of Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones is really just taking it upon himself to kind of be another running back of sorts, and he's really averaging like eight plus rushes a game. This last week you mentioned he went off, got over 100 yards. I think that continues. I think the Giants' offense is now 6-1. They're going to keep going with whatever works, and if Daniel Jones is running on on his feet, on the move, is what's getting things done, I don't see why they're going to change the game plan. And again, with the wide receivers going down and just kind of hit or miss, that's the running attack is kind of the only thing that's consistent in this offense, and it's been what's worked. So he's definitely going to be somebody that's going to give you a lot of upside week to week, and he's only owned in 40% of leagues right now. So you need a bye week fill in, definitely somebody to consider.
I completely agree, and I think that's really what we're chasing for this week is this rushing yards. It's what we're chasing for every single week, right? I mean, that we want quarterbacks that can move the ball. So we'll throw a couple other names here on that same vein. I'll let you take the name that you wrote down there because I know you've been talking about him not just this week but the entire month, honestly. So I'll bring up Justin Fields, who I think it's easy to say last night was his best performance in the NFL, right? Is that safe to say?
I agree.
But and he said an NFL record or last night, or kind of did. He was one of two players in the last 30 seasons to have 100 passing yards, a passing touchdowns, 70 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown in the first half. The only other guy who did that was Russell Wilson, and that was prime Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson could actually throw and run a football back when Seattle was even better than they are now. So Justin Fields has been excellent. He's been unbelievable. He's well on pace I think he's on pace for 800 yards rushing. He might eclipse, I think he's already eclipsed 400. And that 400 mark was really important. I talked about it. If you followed me throughout the offseason, I talked about how the 400 mark is a sign of a QB1. And that is where Justin Fields needs to be going forward because the Bears are getting better each week. This offense is getting better each week, which makes sense because it's a new coaching staff. It's a young quarterback. It's a lot of new pieces. So the progression makes sense. And they just went into Foxborough and shellacked the Patriots. So Justin Fields is going to continue to run the ball, and that's all that matters for fantasy. He could throw for under 200 yards a game for the rest of the season. Doesn't matter. He threw for 179 last night. He was still the QB3. That's what we're looking for is because he's going to get rushing touchdowns. He's going to get rushing yards. Justin Fields is almost possibly a plug and play rest of the season. And because of how he gets it done, because of how he does it on the ground, it's close to matchup proof. Close to it. And I can understand being scared of it because the passing upside is really not there. But if he's going to take 10 carries a game. It's almost a lock. So I'm very interested in Justin Fields the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's not a sexy play from me, but that rushing upside is definitely something that's very encouraging. Somebody that could provide you a lot of points far more easily than throwing the ball even. And we've got a full slate of rushing upside quarterbacks here for you guys. So, Justin Fields, it's kind of one of those things just like New York. The running game seems to be the only thing that's really working for them. Now, granted, Chicago, I would argue, has probably a little bit more reliable receiving core in Mooney and Kmet. But I think Justin just kind of not quite there. I'm not sure if it's probably a combination of things with as far as even his development, people around those receivers to just kind of open each other up, just a conglomeration of things that are explaining why Justin Fields has really been efficient in the passing game. But again, that rushing game is what's working, and that's what they're going to continue to do. So week in and week out, Justin Fields is going to run the ball, and you just kind of keep an eye on those matchups and see who's going to lend well, who's going to lend better to those opportunities, and what matchups is he going to be able to scorch a little bit more. But moving on past Justin Fields, our last quarterback here, I only threw him up here primarily because we kind of saw a glimpse of his rushing upside as well, and I'm kind of excited just to see what he can do. He's not somebody that I'm willing to play even really in desperation, but he might prove after this week he might prove me wrong. Malik Willis with Brian Tannehill going down this last week, and he was in a boot by the end of the game. I wouldn't expect him to go into next week. I wouldn't guarantee a start out of him. In that case, Malik Willis would take the start. The rushing upside is incredible there. In the preseason, he showed us flashes of some pretty encouraging stuff. Again, and with these other Russian quarterbacks, it's just kind of like right now he's got a lack of receiving there right now. He doesn't have a whole lot to work with as far as passing goes. So you're kind of just chasing that rushing upside. But with an offense that is best protected against, or best protects the run, you definitely somebody to ponder. So I might keep an eye on him the next week or two and run in Tannehill status and just see how that plays out. If you got the room, don't be afraid to stash him at the bottom of your bench.
Yeah, they lined him up at wide receiver 2 times in that game. And one of those plays, they gave him an end around, which then they botched the handoff because giving a quarterback an end around is a new level of Taysom Hill madness that we didn't need to see. But the usage is there. The rushing upside is there. And that's what we know about Malik Willis is that he can run the ball. He can also sling it as well. He's got a rocket arm. But I agree that I have far more questions about his ability of moving the passing game than I do about Justin Fields. But I also believe Malik Willis will run the ball almost every single play. So definitely a name that we want to be talking about. But we'll move on to running backs. And last week, we brought up Tyler Algier, who got it done on the ground. Kenyon Drake if Gus misses. But Gus obviously returned, which made it very murky. And obviously, Gus Edwards got the work. And we're going to talk about him in a second. But also Latavius Murray, who did not do well. But he punched in a touchdown, so he didn't totally cripple your fantasy day. Might just be safe to be his hands off of the Broncos as much as we can. Although Jerry Jeudy did get it done because he's a good wide receiver. But running backs is what we're talking about now. Just to quickly touch on the Jets situation, because obviously it's terrible. Breece Hall out for the season with a torn ACL, a small meniscus injury as well. Obviously, James Robinson also got traded to the Jets as of yesterday. Got himself traded there for a 5th-round pick. What are you doing with this backfield? Obviously, James Robinson is rostered. Michael Carter is rostered in most leagues. He's still available in 44% of Yahoo leagues, which is why I wanted to bring it up. But are you interested in Michael Carter right now? Because I still am, personally.
I am for now, because it's going to take a little bit of time for J-Rob to get in and this coaching staff to probably give him a full snap share and get involved with this offense, at least till he's familiar with the playbook. But Michael Carter definitely holds value, at least until then, till we kind of see what kind of role that James Robinson's going to have, because I don't see James Robinson coming in week 1 or the first week in New York and taking 20 carries off the bat. So Michael Carter's been very efficient with all of his touches, even since last year, so I think I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Carter out touches him a little bit. But I would say it could be fairly close. But Michael Carter is probably going to be the one that they lean on, at least till J-Rob gets familiar with the game plan.
Yep. So a very good saying in fantasy football is that we remember the beginning and the end of the year so well, but everything in between we tend to forget. And James Robinson started off the year on fire. But I'm going to throw out some numbers here that, like, the reason why he's lost Travis Etienne's touches is not just because he's not liked. It's because he hasn't been good. He's 53rd in true yards per carry. He's a 47th in yards per touch. He's 122nd in EPA. Now, I don't know what you want to blame for that, but James Robinson has not been great this year. He's been fine. He's been okay. He's been good. And he will get more work with the Jets. They traded for him for a reason. They want to use him. But I do think Michael Carter is going to get third downs. I think we're going to see a week 2, week 3, week 4 type of situation for James Robinson. We're still seeing a bit of a split. Etienne got third downs. That's what Michael Carter will get. And I do think Michael Carter will still get a few carries here or there. And yeah, I mean, James Robinson obviously overcame everything to come back in week 1 with that Achilles. So definitely just a name there. But we'll move on to names that are actually on your wire. And Gus Edwards, who's available in 67% of Yahoo leagues, if you didn't get him right before everyone rushed to their wire on Sundays and Saturdays trying to get to it. He immediately got the rock. First game back from that ACL tear. 16 carries, 66 yards, and 2 scores. He was even better, in my opinion, on the eye test than that box score indicates. He played very well, ran through players. And he's got Tampa on deck, which is not a great matchup. Obviously, Tampa's run defense has always been good, but they were just gouged by Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman. So maybe it's a get-right game for Tampa, but I would have thought after Pittsburgh lost, they would have had a get-right game as well. So I still am very interested in Gus Edwards, and regardless of this week, he's a rest of the season play.
Yeah, definitely. Especially JK's knee is not looking promising. He's in, he's out, he's having surgeries and whatnot. So I think even if or when JK comes back, Gus Edwards is still going to be heavily involved. And for his first game back with 2 scores, 66 yards, and looking great, I definitely a rest of season play for a run heavy offense. Next we have Dearness Johnson for Cleveland. Kareem Hunt has been kind of fluttering with some trade rumors lately, and he's had somewhat of a formidable role in the Cleveland offense. I think if he does get traded, Dearness Johnson would be somebody that we can consider for a roster spot, simply just because the Cleveland Browns have favored this community backfield of sorts. Not to say that he's going to take many touches or value away from Nick Chubb or anything like that, but this offense lends well to rushing opportunity. And even with Nick Chubb getting his, they seem to leave plenty on the field for their backup running backs. Kareem Hunt's found the end zone time and time again in his time there this year, a little bit less than maybe last year, but Dearness Johnson, I would argue, is going to be a little bit different runner and could add another facet to this offense. So who knows? Definitely, if you have a roster spot in your deeper leagues, he'd be somebody you consider if waivers are looking pretty dry right now.
Yep, and I said it last week, and maybe I'm just hoping for it, but I think Kareem Hunt is a Ram by the end of this week. That's my personal prediction, and maybe that's just wishful thinking, but they were in on the CMC talks till the end. I think they're going to go out and get themselves a guy. But I'm going to bring up, let's talk about Carolina, which I guess they were good this week. Carolina won against the Bucs 21-3. Who saw that coming? And it came largely because of that rushing attack between Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman. Came out right before the game that Chuba Hubbard's the starter and everyone flipped out and played nobody pretty much. And then turns out both were playable. Both played fairly well. I still don't think Chuba Hubbard's that good. It was a near 50-50 split. Deontay Foreman actually outsnapped Hubbard 54-46. But, Hubbard also left late in the game with an ankle injury, so it was probably closer to a dead even split for a team that will not be scoring 21 points every week. A team that will not be running over defenses every single week. This is as much of an anomaly as I really think it is. That said, like you just eloquently said, the running back sucked this year. You didn't really say it like that, but I'm just going to abbreviate and say it like that. So the running back landscape is dire. And if you need to grab somebody, I'm still chasing Deontay Foreman over Chuba, but I really don't expect either to be that good. If I'm in Dynasty and I already had him, if I'm in Redraft and I already had him, I'd be trying to sell them for whatever I can because I don't think Carolina is going to be scoring 21 points every week, let alone having a potent rushing attack where they can also control the clock. Like, does anyone think Carolina is going to be leading in most games? Because I certainly don't, because that allows you to run the ball as much as they do. So I still have a ton of question marks about them. So yeah, I'm not that interested. But those are our running backs for this week. I've seen a few wires checking out for Cam Akers and Alexander Madison because I think both are trade candidates this week. So with the deadline coming up, why not just stash them on their bench? If they had traded to the Rams to, there's a few teams with few needy teams that are calling around. If the Broncos trade for somebody, if the Bills trade for somebody, if if the Rams trade for somebody. All those teams have called around for running back, so why not? Why not if you have a spot? So that concludes the running backs. We'll jump over to wide receivers. Again, if you have any questions at any point, jump them in the chat. Infinite possibilities. We are definitely going to get to them as our loyal listener. And again, if anybody has any other offense, defensive questions, just keep dropping them in. We're going to get to them at the end of the tight end section. But let's kick off wide receivers, Axton. Last week, we brought up Rondell Moore, who disappointed me beyond measures because I didn't like him, and I trusted him this week in the matchup against the Saints, against that banged-up Saints secondary, and he stunk it up in a major way. And Michael Gallup also looked terrible and is still not right from that ACL, in my opinion. Chase Claypool fell down and did a slippy slide thing, so we are hoping to get back on track on this wide receiver group this week because that trio last week really annoyed me. Which one do you want to start off with?
Well, I'll go ahead and put up talk about Marquise Goodwin with DK Metcalf was injured this last week, and I'm not sure. Did he make it on IR? I'm not exactly sure how long.
Not yet, because the situation with DK Metcalf obviously left the game with that patella injury. DK said he's trying to practice Wednesday. Pete Carroll is saying, it's the great news because Pete Carroll is the eternal optimist of injuries. I think logistically he's going to miss this week at least because injuries are always more Seattle than they make them out to be.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Marquise Goodwin came in this last week when DK went down and put up a couple of touchdowns and had himself a day. And you asked if I was interested in him at all on our shot sheet here because you're really not all that interested. But to me, while DK's out, I think he's going to be a guy that defenses aren't going to focus on. He's going to be somebody that nobody really knows a whole lot about. And while they're focused on Lockett, I think it could be possible that he might sneak behind defenses and grab himself a couple of big plays or a touchdown here and there while DK is out. So I'm not chasing him because I think he's just, this outwardly talented wide receiver that's just going to develop a role for the rest of the season. But as far as a replacement goes, he may be somebody that defenses just don't know a lot about, and frankly, that could allow for a little bit more opportunity with him, especially with Geno actually having himself a year. He's right now at this point through 7 weeks, he's like the QB9 in leagues that have 6-point touchdowns and even docked for sacks and interceptions. So Geno Smith's going to keep rolling, and I'd expect I wouldn't be surprised if Goodwin kind of reaps a little bit of the benefits while DK misses time.
This is the biggest test for Geno Smith to date because downgrading from DK Metcalf to Marquise Goodwin at this point in Marquise Goodwin's career, at almost any point in Marquise Goodwin's career, it's substantial. And that's why I'm not super interested, is because it's too much of a downgrade, and I'm still not 100% confident in Geno Smith's ability to elevate everyone around him. I think he's been excellent this year. He's been excellent, but I still worry about it. That said, the Giants have been a very leaky defense over the last few weeks, which is very uncharacteristic of what they've been. So, color me interested. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it happening, and probably more of a DFS guy for me. Depends on what I expect ownership to be later in the week.
Yeah. I think it's more of a big play ability there, more so than just kind of volume dependent. So.
Yeah. He can catch 2 touchdowns on 5 targets, and I would not be surprised. In fact, that's pretty much what he's done for most of his career, and it's what he did this past week against the Chargers. So I will throw out – God, I'm not in love with these wide receivers this week. I'll tell you this right now. And I'll throw out Wan'Dale Robinson, and I feel like I'm falling into the exact same trap with Rondell Moore because I didn't like Rondell Moore in the draft. I didn't like Wan'Dale Robinson in the draft. But – they're both players, and talking more about Wan'Dale Robinson, guys that should be scripted touches. And I do have faith in Brian Dable to do that more than I had in Cliff Kingsbury, where Wan'Dale's gotten them. He saw 8 targets this past week. He saw 5 the week before that and scored off one of them. He's getting the quick throws, and that's what the Giants need to do because, Daniel Jones throwing deep, that's not what this offense can do. It's not what this offense has done. It's not working because they don't have the personnel to do it. So quick throws to Wan'Dale, see what he can do with it. He's a good PPR play to me. He's a very safe PPR play to me, as safe as it comes against Seattle secondary that, as well as the corners have played, they're still allowing 250 passing yards in the league, which is a bottom 10 number, 250 passing yards a game. So I do like Wan'Dale Robinson this week. He's getting short scripted plays. He's 71% available in Yahoo leagues. Again, it's scary because I still don't think he's that great of a player, but he's the guy that should get near every down roll with this Giants offense because the wide receivers there are just hot garbage.
Yeah, definitely so. And as we alluded to earlier, the wide receiver core just really isn't making anything consistent happen. And when you have a wide receiver that is sort of a gadget player for this offense and kind of allows them to I guess make something out of nothing, they can use him in ways that defenses are not really going to be able to prepare for. And so I think he's going to really thrive on those surprise plays where he gets the end around or quick screener or, just however they really like to use him in all sorts of ways. So Wan'Dale definitely, especially in PPR leagues, definitely somebody to to go out and grab, honestly. Stash him on your bench. Paris Campbell would be the last name that we have on this on our sheet. And I know you've been a big Paris Campbell stan this whole year, just waiting for that breakout. And the last couple of weeks have been really promising for him. Now with Matt Ryan going out, I'm not sure quite what his future might look like beyond this week, but definitely somebody that's been soaking up a lot of targets the last couple of weeks, even out targeting rookie Alec Pierce, who I've kind of thought was actually going to step into that role. So the targets seem to be flowing to him. If he can keep that up, he's definitely could be a very viable play the rest of the season if this offense can get that passing game working.
Yeah, I Paris Campbell's been. He's been good. He's been so frustrated because when I had him on my rosters, he was terrible. And then I had to let him go because I had to make hard personnel decisions in some of my leagues, not all of them, mind you. But then he pops off again. And I still believe in the talent. I just think it's going to be so hard to predict. Not sure why their screens just flip like that. That was weird. But I want to bring up a quick point here by Infinite Possibilities about Daniel Bellinger, who had that really gruesome kind of eye injury, had that bone fracture around his eye. That should also open up a few more targets for Wan'Dale Robinson this week. But on the topic of Daniel Bellinger, if you're chasing for a new tight end, you're chasing for any tight end, we have guys on bye. Let's get into that because there's a name that I love. Before I do that, I want to mention Robert Tonyan we brought up last week. Who can you? I actually don't remember how Robert Tonyan did this week. Fact check me on that. Evan Ingram, who somewhat disappointed this week as usual because randomly Dan Arnold's going to get a 30-yard screen. And then we brought up Greg Dulcich.
4 targets.
Okay.
He saw three receptions on 4 targets for 32 yards. So he's still seen a fair amount of looks anyways. I would kind of argue that might have been a miss for last week, but still somebody
definitely
been tight end wire, somebody to consider.
I would definitely call it a miss last week, but I remember now we brought it up as somebody that might struggle against that Washington unit that was allowing. It was a top 5 unit against the tight end, and we brought him up this week as well. We brought him pick him up next week or pick him up last week, maybe play him this week, and then definitely play him this week because Green Bay has a much better matchup, especially with Allen Lazard misses. It opens up for a much better day for Robert Tonyan. So I would give it a forgive and forget if he is still on your wire or if you did pick him up last week. And we also brought up Greg Dulcich last week, who had rebounded again, despite Brett Ripp being under center, caught 6 balls, had 9 targets, was really strong, and looks to be a very good dynasty name to have on your team, especially if you do have him, and potentially a good reach-out player going forward. I'm still a bit scared of that Broncos unit, to be chasing a Broncos unit. I think it was also partially a factor of Sauce Gardner taking Cortland Sutton out of the game, but Greg Dulcich is still a good player, and good players get it done. On that topic, allow me to give me some courtesy to start this one off because I'm very excited for this one. And I'm going to Harrison Bryant. Let me just get into this. Harrison Bryant, who I've been talking about for a while now because I've always thought that he is a better player than David Njoku. And obviously David Njoku has been excellent this year, which is also why I'm excited for Harrison Bryant because I think the usage is going to be there for Bryant because David Njoku now dealing with a high ankle sprain, expected to be out 2 to 5 weeks. Harrison Bryant has been a good player. He's had quietly a 21% target rate when he's out there, with the 9th best average depth of target among tight ends. So these are valuable targets on a team that doesn't really have valuable targets sometimes. And all he hasn't had is snaps. He's 38th in snaps because Njoku's been there. So, and I expect him to be the full-time starter in week 8 and beyond. And I'm going to plug and play him if I don't have a locked-in guy, if I'm looking for a streamer, which a lot of people are. So I think Harrison Bryant's going to be very high in my tight end rankings this week. And listen, I do the tight end rankings for IDP Guys. So if you have IDP Guys subscription, or if you don't, you should definitely get one. Be sure to check out the rankings, which will be updated later tonight and updated throughout the week as well.
Yeah, with Njoku coming out. Actually, the last few weeks, the Browns have seemed to really favor the tight end position and
Yes,
have gotten Njoku a lot more looks. So that's really encouraging for Harrison Bryant going forward with Njoku out for the next few weeks. I haven't seen a whole lot of Bryant, but you noted he's more talented than Njoku, and in my opinion, I thought Njoku was a pretty good player. So definitely somebody in a thin positional field, somebody to look forward to. Roster, even possibly spot start if it comes down to it.
I hope the baby's all good over there. Cranky baby, happy baby.
That's cranky. I'm gonna have to get him up here and hold him for a sec.
Could you mute for a sec? Just oh, you got it. Okay, cool. All right, that's no problem at all. The other tight end I want to bring up, Irv Smith Jr. of the Minnesota Vikings, coming off that bye week. Definitely the third wheel in this offense, right? And we have Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen still around, Dalvin Cook catching a few passes himself. But Irv Smith facing the Cardinals this week is just a matchup I cannot ignore. The Cardinals allowed the second most points to the tight end. Last week we saw Juwan Johnson catch himself a pair of TDs. So 68% of Yahoo leagues, he is out there. We are excited for Irv Smith this week, I suppose, which is the best thing that you could say about Irv Smith, because the matchup is great. The offense will move from Minnesota, and the red zone opportunities should be plentiful. So he's also quietly he's 8th in red zone targets among tight ends, which is pretty impressive, especially when you're competing with guys like Justin Jefferson, 4 targets in those areas, and Dalvin Cook even on some dump downs. So I do like Irv Smith this week, and what that probably means is that CJ Ham's going to catch 30 touchdowns, but I'll still be very excited for Irv Smith and play him in most lineups because that matchup is juicy. So let's get into the questions. Again, if you guys have any, continue to drop them in the chat. We got a lot here from Infinite Possibilities. Let's start with the one from the top of the show from Alexander, saying he has Ryan Tannehill in Superflex. What would you do? Would we go after Malik Willis to be safe for the year, or go with Sam Ehlinger? He has Herbert on a bye, Jacoby Brissett, and Watson on the bench. Obviously, Watson not eligible to play, so you only have one active quarterback. Actually, not. You'd have Brissett and Tannehill possibly missing. So I would strongly go after Malik Willis. It's a guy that on the rushing volume we talked about before has all the upside in the world because he can run the ball 15 times in this game and nobody will blink an eye. So I would definitely be going after Malik Willis. I don't have high expectations for Sam Ehlinger. As much of a jolt he might give this offense, I don't think he's going to be great for fantasy, especially beyond a 1-week sample. But I will.
I'm 100% with you there. I'd go after Willis over Ehlinger anyways. Just again, the offensive line is built to help protect the run game. With Ehlinger coming in, he's really seems like he's with backups. We tend to see them really hyper target their top wideouts, and with Michael Pittman being really the standout wide receiver for them, he might end up having a hard time if defenses can step in front of him. Ehlinger might have trouble getting the ball out. So, Willis is going to run the ball no matter what. The passing receivers being open and available isn't quite as much of an issue for a guy that can really do work on the ground like him. So of the two, I'm in agreement. I'm going Willis.
Alrighty. So he also there's infinite possibilities now. Has Mahomes and Herbert as his quarterback, so you can see the dilemma. Which waiver order would we put Daniel Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, who disappointed me a bit this week, but still should have better weeks going forward, and Jacoby Brissett? I'd probably go Daniel Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett. I'd probably go in that order, to be honest. Jimmy Garoppolo might be in front of Daniel Jones for me, but it's very close. I'd probably go Daniel Jones, Garoppolo, Brissett.
I'm in agreement. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were reading it off. Daniel Jones, Jimmy G. It might week to week matchup dependent. Daniel Jones and Garoppolo might kind of fluctuate back and forth for me, but I'm in agreement. I'd go Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and Garoppolo has the Rams this week. It's not a super ideal matchup. Plus, you have a bye week after that. So if I am not playing Garoppolo this week, then I have to hold him through a bye. So if I can leave him on the wire and wait, that might be even better. He's got a string of great matchups after the bye between the Chargers, Arizona, the Saints. There's a lot of good ones to target after that. Just asking quick. He's a Jet fan. I apologize for your sadness this week. Is James Robinson any good on the Achilles, or is he dust? I think he's somewhere in between. Obviously, we saw they still have some juice in week 1 and week 2. But like I said, I am worried about James Robinson. I don't think he's the player he was. That said, you didn't give up much to get rid of him or to get him. A conditional 6th that may turn into a 5th. Why not? Why not? I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what James Robinson can do if they're going to give him somewhat of a role, and maybe if he's taking on 15 to 20 touches a game after the next few weeks and really develops a heavy role, kind of like what Breece Hall did. I wouldn't mind having him as a flex play week to week, but I think just with the uncertainty and kind of his change of situation with his efficiency in the past and stuff, we kind of just have to err on the side of caution, at least for now. But definitely somebody that is still gonna get some work. So I'd be somewhat interested. I thought about targeting him if I could get him on the low via trade. If you still got him, definitely hold on to him and just kind of be patient.
Yeah, and I do think they traded for him to use him, and I do think that the team can't win with Zach Wilson. Like, I don't think this team can win with Zach Wilson putting it on his back. So I think they need that rushing attack that needs James Robinson and Michael Carter to both be great. I'm also worried because Elijah Vera Tucker is also out for the year, which is just as devastating as Breece Hall because he's been excellent. As a Jet fan, I'm sure infinite possibilities. It's just it's tough. I do feel bad, and I'm from New York myself, so I have plenty of Jet friends who are quite upset with it. He said he also drafted TDP, Tyrion Davis-Price, and Keontae Ingram and everywhere. Are they dust or just guys? TDP is just a guy, and was I'm sorry from the minute he was drafted at LSU. Keontae Ingram is also just a guy, but with James Conner out, he has had a somewhat interesting role. So I definitely would hold on to him. Tyrion Davis-Price, that role to playing time is really non-existent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially after CMC, that could have pretty well solidified it for everybody afterwards on the depth chart. So, yeah, definitely fading him. But who was the other option there?
Keontae Ingram.
Yeah, really only valuable if James Conner goes out and remains out with a rib injury. It's not really something that should keep him out for a long period of time. But you might see him miss a game here or there, in which case Keontae would come in and help split duties with, Benjamin. But then again, he's still splitting and kind of more or less taking the second fiddle to Eno's 1A anyways. So at this point, they're kind of both just, like you said, they're just guys. They're really only valuable for now.
And you also have Darrell Williams potentially coming back at some point this year to add another wrench in it. So a bit of a fun one here, not waiver related, but I'll bring it up. Best fantasy football league type, size, and amount of teams. So I'm a huge dynasty guy, but so my personal answer would be a dynasty, obviously with IDP in it as well. A dynasty offense only league with 12 teams is my favorite thing, but redraft, I don't want to do a redraft for the league that doesn't have IDP anymore. I really enjoy digging through these waiver wire IDP guys every single week, and drafting them and not having as much. There's a lot more volatility, I feel like, with defensive players in the offseason than with offensive, because we're dealing with much more players that we're talking about. We're not dealing with offensive linemen, So those are my answers. I'm a big dynasty guy.
Yeah, this is my second year dynasty, but even in doing so, I found if I could have my perfect league type, I would say super flex tight end premium with IDP mixed in. I've really loved the tight end premium leagues I've been in. Superflex really just adds another aspect to the quarterback field and kind of just makes you think a little bit more. Then with IDP, you're just at, like you mentioned, there's just so many more players you can roster on the IDP side. Whereas when you're dealing with just offense only, the line takes out half the offense. So you're really only dealing with half of the players that you would in IDP. And there's so many different variables to IDP, you know what I mean? Like with wide receivers for like your offense, you're dealing with maybe one or two per team max that can give you even possibly give you somewhat starting numbers. You know, even if that, you might, there's some teams right now that freaking Ravens. Nobody wants any of the wide receivers for the Ravens right now, you know? But with every defensive team, they've got that stud linebacker that's seeing all the snaps every week and getting production, you know, just making things happen and getting you points. I looked at it earlier yesterday, and in my half PPR league that I'm in with IDP, right now, and I know that Justin Jefferson just went on by, but Foyeside Olicon has actually outscored Justin Jefferson to this point in that league. So it just kind of adds a little bit of perspective. It just gives you a lot more to think about. And to me, it's just been a never-ending kind of fun. You know, there's just all sorts of different plays you can go into with IDP. And if you're in a league with your buddies or something, and you have any kind of IDP, like the IDP guys, you have source for IDP. I've managed to really get a collection of IDP players in my home leagues that are mixed, just simply because I have the resources and I have people to kind of follow and information available to me to really take that step up above my league mates. And I would argue that it's really paid off. My IDP, as far as that's concerned, has really saved my ass, for lack of better words, several times this year. So definitely my favorite league type would be 12-team super flex tight end premium with IDP mixed in.
Absolutely. That was incredibly well put. We'll go back to a more basic question here. Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, Juwan Johnson has to play too. Who do you play? Like I mentioned, my tight end rankings will be up later tonight on the IDP Guys site, so you can always check that out. But for this trio, I am not in love with chasing Juwan Johnson after last week's boom. Obviously, Adam Troutman also missed, so that opens up a bit of higher floor for Troutman, or not for Troutman, for Juwan Johnson. They face, they face the Raiders, which is a really good matchup. But no Fant's untrustworthy as hell, as long as Will Dissly is still factoring in. So I'll go Evan Ingram and Juwan Johnson. I'm starting to be as hands off on. Maybe it's Will Dissly, maybe it's Noah Fant, maybe it's Colby Parkinson. It's a three-headed tight end back set is no mess that I want to deal with for a team that, like, maybe DK opens up targets. What he does really is limit this offense. So I have no interest in taking on that circle of tight ends. I'll take Ingram and Juwan.
Yep, I'm in total agreement. Ingram's really seen a lot of targets and pretty decent usage in Jacksonville, and Juwan Johnson has had some splash weeks here and there. So definitely hands off Noah Fant.
Okay, so we're in agreement there. So last question here for Infinite Possibilities, in the type of dirty question that I personally enjoy. 16-team, 53-man roster, 1 QB league. Is it worth it to trade tight end Grant Calcaterra? If you don't know who that is, you are forgiven. That is the tight end out of SMU, undrafted on the Eagles, who has worked his way into that backup job, kind of splitting with Jack Stoll. For tight end Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State, 3rd-round pick, went to the Jets, obviously behind Tyler Conklin, who got paid this offseason, as well as CJ Uzama, who got paid this offseason. This is obviously not going to factor in with your starting lineup too much, so I don't think you're going to be too stressed here. I personally liked, because I did deep dives into all these guys on the pre-draft, I didn't like Ruckert much. I thought he was very limiting. And I like Grant Calcaterra actually quite a lot. I kind of liked him a little bit too much. So the problem is he got undrafted. And the hit rate for undrafted players, let alone undrafted tight ends, really slim. So in a vacuum, I would take Ruckert just because he has the longer leash, because he has day 2 capital for a front office that should be there for a long time. CJ Uzama is greatly underwhelming, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is elsewhere this time next year. So Bruckert has a role to the tight end 2 role, if that even matters. And Calcaterra, it's just the fact that he's undrafted. So if I could trade an undrafted player for somebody with day 2 capital, I would do that, despite me still liking Calcaterra as a prospect. I really thought he was such an interesting player, Axton. I probably don't know who he is because I don't blame you at all. Undrafted player out of SMU. He had
honestly, no, I wouldn't be able to answer this question, so I'm going to leave it to you.
He had a great start to his career, and then he got too many concussions. He actually stepped away from football for, I think it was a year or 2 years, and then returned for his senior year. Flashed, had a decent performance, and declared for the draft, and obviously got undrafted in that prospect, but latched on with the Eagles and worked away into meaningful playing time as undrafted player. So if I have a ridiculously weak tight end room that I have a small chance of playing any of these guys this year, maybe I hold Calcaterra. But dynasty, long run, I'll take on Ruckert and just hope the draft capital works out. That is the longest I have talked about him since April. So I can't believe that. But
been waiting for that one, haven't you?
I really liked him, man. I did. I really liked him out of SMU. But he's an athletic guy. I do like Grant. But no, we appreciate the questions and for possibilities. And definitely, I saw your comment as well about getting this on Facebook. I'll be talking to people about that, try to get this out there on a little bit more platforms, get some more questions in, get it all flowing, because we do like taking the time to help you guys out, and we really do help. We really do appreciate having everyone interact like this. It's incredibly so much fun for both of us, I know. But that is our show, Axton. You got any final thoughts before I lead us on out?
I don't have any final thoughts. The only thought I got right now is that I think my baby needs a diaper change. So that's kind of
all right. So no better time then. No better time then. Let's get that diaper change going. That'll be our show.
Thank you guys for all the questions and everything. We've had a great time. This was fun. I apologize for my absence, but I still had fun nonetheless.
No, fatherhood comes first, and the fantasy football comes second. So, thank you guys for everyone tuning in for this Waiver Wire show, Week 8 pickups. Hopefully, everyone gets the guys that you were looking for on your wire, and hopefully do well on your matchups this week. We'll obviously be back next Tuesday, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. As always, be sure to submit those questions. And if you do have any questions over the weekend, you can always find both of us on Twitter. You follow me at Michael__Sicoli. Follow Axton at Harding_3. And of course, the IDP guys at IDP Guys is always worth your follow. You can send the questions in there, and you'll find one of us one way or another. Of course, if you are subscribed, you're already contacting us on the Discord channels. If you're not subscribed, why aren't you? Definitely check it out because it's a ton of fun. Access to our rankings, updated Dynasty ADP, Discord channels with everything in there, including a sports betting channel that I am riding a ridiculously hot streak of a 10 of 11 on my defensive bets since over the last 2 weeks of football. So hoping to keep that going. Those picks I throw out there a bit on Twitter, so check that out, as well as always in that sports betting channel. Ton of fun talking to everyone in there. So just can't recommend it enough. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday with more Waiver Wire content, more fantasy football. Good luck and stay healthy.